here and blame somebody else for what's happening with education as opposed to looking into the mirror. Now let me unpack that for a second. Let me be real clear. I can't stand a sorry teacher.
Amen. Amen.
I moderated an event in D.C. with the Shot Foundation, and on the panel was Reverend Jackson, and it was John Jackson, and there was Randy Weingarten, and I made that comment, and this dude jumped up. He said, "Sir, there are no sorry teachers." I said, "Man, sit down." And they all looked, and I told them, I said, "You knew when you booked me to moderate how I roll." I said, "I'm in media. It's a bunch of sorry people in my business. And I do all I can to get them out." I said, "Sorry people hurt great people." Because they all lumped in together. And I told the guy, I said, "Let me be clear. I don't like sorry teachers. I don't like sorry principals. I don't like sorry administrators.
Yes.
I don't like sorry school boards.
Yes.
I don't like sorry politicians." I said, and let me be real clear, I can't stand no punk sorry parents. Y'all got real quiet. I said, "So have we covered everybody who's sorry?" I said, "Now make your point before I sit you down." And I wanted him to understand that is because we are scared to say that when we all know it's true. I just don't believe people who are inadequate should be in positions.
Yes. Amen.
And the reason I say that, because this is going to require a change of attitude, because if we are honest, we have allowed the mindset to go on for decades that if I can't cut it anywhere else,
Go to education.
at least
I can teach. Oh, Lord, have mercy.
We literally have allowed that mindset to penetrate so many people. It's no difference than when I was at Essence Music Festival and Bill Cosby was on stage and he was talking about why education is so important, and then he made this comment. He said, because if you don't get your education, all you might have left is the military. And I was standing there with a 2-star general. And the 2-star general was fuming. First, because the U.S. Army was one of the supporters of Essence Music Festival. They were one of the sponsors. And his brother, he turned to me and he said, "Roland, that's the stuff we have to stop, because what he doesn't understand is that you have corporate leaders who come out of the military."
Yes.
He said, "We are providing skill sets to folks who otherwise wouldn't get it."
Yes.
He said, "When you look at the number of officers that we have," he said, "we can't continue to allow that to be the case because of the value that we bring." And so what has happened is we have been reduced to saying, if you can't cut it, you go into the military. And if you do go to college, you can't cut it, well, just be a teacher, and that's something you can, quote, fall back on. I just don't quite see it that way. I just don't see teaching as being a throwaway thing. I just don't see it as something that if you couldn't cut it in somebody else's field, well, let's just stick them in the classroom and that's just the job of last resort. No, that's what I mean by saying we have to be fearless in saying, no, we don't want the lowest common denominator. We don't want the lowest bidder. We want the highest common denominator. We want exceptional people, not folks who have been kicked out of somebody else's department. But that causes us to look at those who we know should not be in somebody's classroom and be willing to tell leadership they got to go.
Yes.
Look, I went to public schools my entire life. And I can tell you as a student, I witnessed teachers and administrators and principals who had no business being in a classroom.
Yes.
And I was a little different student. You know, I got P's and U's in conduct, Doc, when I was in school, because I had a propensity to talk. My daddy beat my behind all the time for it. Problem now is my dad now lives, him and my mom live in my house in Dallas that's paid for. And they retired, and the car they drive is the one I paid off. Dad now realizes that I get paid to talk for a living. So I told my daddy, damn it, that was practice. So all the whippings I got were unnecessary. He told me then, he said, stop talking. Now he don't know how much I get paid. He says, don't stop talking. But even when I was in school, I was willing to jam up some folks who I knew had no business being in the classroom because I did not want them to affect my education based upon their sorrowness in the classroom. And so when I say no fear, that means we have to be willing to challenge leaders and say, I'm sorry, no disrespect, but some of these folks should not be teaching the next generation, because what that shows when you do that, it shows that you actually care more about the profession than somebody keeping a job.
Yes. Yes.
No fear also means that we must demand accountability and not just of ourselves. When I talked about sorry parents, I mean, do understand that last year when Mary Wright Edelman, Dr. Jeffrey Cannon released the state of Black America, the state of Black children in America, the report last year, National Press Club, they talked about the fact that so many black kids are coming to kindergarten not even knowing 250 words. Mm-hmm. And they're having to be taught of, the, and, but. Basic words they should have learned before they even got there. And Canada said if we're going to address what's happening with black children in America, we can't start at 5. We got to go into the womb.
Yes.
He said because a black child is falling behind a white child even in the mother's womb. And what has happened is that our schools, unfortunately, are no longer schools. They now have become social service centers. I don't quite understand, and look, I understand what happens externally, but a school building cannot be responsible for educating and feeding and health care and counseling and clothing. Once you begin to do all that stuff, you don't have time to teach. I was talking to a church, and they asked me, they said, man, we're doing some great stuff. We have housing stuff, and we have health stuff, and they were telling me all the stuff they're doing. I said, that's all good, but y'all saving any souls? He looked at me, I said, well, you know that is your first job. Your first responsibility is to introduce Jesus Christ to a bunch of folk. Everything else is secondary. But that's what we have been reduced to, where schools have become community centers, social service centers, and not education centers. And no fear means you are going to have to articulate that and say it even to the very folks who are dropping their kids off. I see, this is where we get a little touchy. Because see, what happens is we like to have a conversation about D, C, and E as opposed to A, B, and C. The reality is this here. And I've been confronting folks on this across this country, on all of our platforms, and you can't talk about what teachers are not doing when you literally have people who are being dropped off who were not being taught from the ages of 0 to 4 or 0 to 5.
Yes.
You can't have a child not be educated for the first 5 years of their life and all of a sudden say, here you go, now you take them. At some point, educators in this country are going to have to challenge parents, specifically black parents, to say, I need you to do your job from 0 to 5 before they get